Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin was born on October 7, 1952, in Leningrad, which is now known as St. Petersburg, Russia. His early life was marked by hardship and the aftermath of World War II, as the city had suffered immense destruction and deprivation during the siege of Leningrad. Putin grew up in a communal apartment shared with several other families, which was common in the Soviet Union during that time. The experience of living in such crowded conditions exposed him to the realities of scarcity, resilience, and the importance of community from an early age. Putin was the youngest of 3 children. Although his 2 older brothers died before he was born, his father, Vladimir Spiridonovich Putin, was a factory foreman, and his mother, Maria Ivanovna Shelemova, worked in a factory producing textiles. His parents instilled in him a strong work ethic and discipline, values that would later influence both his personal life and his professional career. Growing up in a post-war Soviet environment, he witnessed firsthand the hardships faced by ordinary citizens, which contributed to his sense of pragmatism and survival instincts. From an early age, Putin displayed an interest in sports and physical activity. He trained in judo and sambo, a Soviet martial art, which not only developed his physical strength, but also taught him strategy, discipline, and self-control. These qualities became central to his personality and were often reflected in his calculated approach to political maneuvering later in life. He also participated in swimming, ice hockey, and other athletic pursuits, which contributed to his public image as a disciplined and determined individual. Education played a crucial role in shaping Vladimir Putin's path. He attended Leningrad State University, where he studied law, graduating in 1975. During his university years, he demonstrated a strong interest in history, politics, and international relations. His education provided him with an understanding of the structure of the Soviet system and the mechanisms of governance, which would later prove invaluable in his political career. While in university, he became fluent in German, a skill that facilitated his later work in intelligence and diplomacy. Following his graduation, Putin joined the KGB, the Soviet Union's main security agency, in 1975. He underwent rigorous training and eventually served in various capacities, including a period stationed in Dresden, East Germany. His time in the KGB allowed him to develop skills in intelligence gathering, analysis, negotiation, and surveillance, all of which would become critical tools in his political life. The experience also exposed him to the complexities of international politics, the balance of power between states, and the role of strategic decision-making under pressure. Putin's early life and background were thus characterized by a combination of resilience, discipline, and intellectual curiosity. His upbringing in a recovering Leningrad, his immersion in sports and martial arts, his academic achievements, and his work in intelligence collectively shaped the man who would eventually rise to the presidency of Russia. The combination of personal hardship, physical training, and exposure to high-stakes environments created a foundation for the calculated, strategic, and often enigmatic leadership style that has defined his career. Vladimir Putin's political rise began after his tenure in the KGB, during which he had acquired significant experience in intelligence, diplomacy, and strategic planning. Following the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, Russia experienced a period of political and economic instability, creating opportunities for emerging leaders with administrative and organizational skills. Putin entered public service in St. Petersburg, initially serving as an advisor to the mayor, Anatoly Sobchak. In this role, he demonstrated his ability to navigate complex political landscapes, manage bureaucratic structures, and build influential networks within the government. His work in St. Petersburg gained him recognition for his administrative competence and ability to implement reforms effectively. He became known for his pragmatic approach to governance, focusing on order, discipline, and efficiency in the midst of widespread chaos. His reputation as a problem solver and his experience in intelligence provided him with both the skill set and the credibility to ascend the political ladder rapidly. By 1996, he had moved to Moscow to serve in various federal positions within the presidential administration, further consolidating his influence and visibility within the central government. In 1998, Putin was appointed as the head of the Federal Security Service, known as the FSB, the successor organization to the KGB. This position placed him at the center of national security and intelligence operations, allowing him to oversee critical matters related to domestic security, counterintelligence, and the maintenance of state authority. His tenure at the FSB enhanced his understanding of the inner workings of power and further strengthened his reputation as a decisive and disciplined leader. In August 1999, President Boris Yeltsin appointed Vladimir Putin as Prime Minister of Russia. This appointment marked a turning point in his political career, positioning him as the second most powerful figure in the Russian government. Within months, Yeltsin resigned unexpectedly, and Putin became acting president. His swift rise to the presidency was aided by his public image as a competent, strong, and pragmatic leader capable of restoring stability and order to a country that had experienced significant turmoil throughout the 1990s. In March 2000, Vladimir Putin was elected as President of Russia in his own right. During his first term, he implemented policies aimed at consolidating federal authority, stabilizing the economy, and enhancing Russia's international standing. His presidency was characterized by efforts to centralize power, reduce the influence of regional governors, and strengthen the federal government. Putin utilized his experience in intelligence and administration to build a political structure that emphasized loyalty, efficiency, and strategic control over key state institutions. Putin's leadership style combined assertiveness with pragmatism. He projected an image of strength, discipline, and decisiveness, which resonated with many Russians seeking stability after the uncertain years of post-Soviet transition. Throughout his presidency, he focused on economic reforms, including tax restructuring, stabilization of the national currency, and the development of key energy sectors such as oil and gas. These policies contributed to periods of economic growth and reinforced his popularity among the electorate. In 2008, after serving 2 consecutive terms, Putin was constitutionally prevented from running for a 3rd consecutive term. He appointed Dmitry Medvedev as his successor, assuming the position of Prime Minister, while continuing to wield significant influence behind the scenes. This arrangement allowed him to maintain control over strategic decision-making while preserving the appearance of adherence to constitutional limits. In 2012, following constitutional changes and popular support, Vladimir Putin returned to the presidency, continuing to shape domestic and foreign policy according to his vision of a strong and centralized Russia. Vladimir Putin's domestic policies and leadership style have been defining aspects of his tenure as President of Russia, shaping both the political and social landscape of the country. From the beginning of his presidency, Putin focused on consolidating central authority and strengthening the power of the federal government. He sought to reduce the influence of regional leaders, known as governors, by creating mechanisms for oversight and direct accountability to the Kremlin. This centralization of power was intended to create a more stable and coordinated system of governance, particularly after the chaotic years following the collapse of the Soviet Union. Economic reform has been a central component of Putin's domestic agenda. He implemented policies aimed at stabilizing the Russian economy, including tax reforms, fiscal consolidation, and the development of strategic sectors such as energy, defense, and transportation. Under his leadership, the government introduced measures to attract foreign investment while simultaneously asserting greater state control over key industries. The consolidation of major energy companies, including the creation of state-controlled oil and gas giants, allowed Russia to increase its economic leverage both domestically and internationally. Putin emphasized the importance of balancing market mechanisms with state oversight, arguing that a strong central authority was necessary for sustainable economic growth. Another critical element of Putin's domestic policies has been the emphasis on law and order. He has consistently promoted strong security measures, enhanced policing, and anti-terrorism initiatives as a means of maintaining social stability. This focus on security has included efforts to combat organized crime, address corruption, and strengthen the judicial system. Although critics argue that these measures have also been used to suppress dissent and consolidate political power, the Kremlin under Putin has implemented strict regulations on media outlets, political opposition, and civil society organizations, which supporters claim are necessary to maintain order and prevent destabilization, while opponents view them as limitations on freedom and political plurality. Social policy under Putin has also reflected a combination of traditional values and pragmatic governance. He has promoted initiatives aimed at increasing population growth, improving public health, and enhancing education, often framing these programs as a way to strengthen national identity and resilience. Programs to support families, encourage childbirth, and provide state assistance to young couples have been part of a broader effort to counter demographic decline. Simultaneously, Putin has emphasized patriotism, historical continuity, and cultural pride, positioning himself as a defender of Russian heritage and values. Putin's leadership style is often characterized by pragmatism, strategic calculation, and a careful projection of authority. He is known for cultivating a public image of strength, discipline, and decisiveness, frequently presenting himself as a leader capable of making difficult decisions in times of crisis. He combines this with a measured and controlled approach to public appearances, interviews, and political communication, carefully managing both domestic perception and international image. This combination of visible authority and behind-the-scenes strategic maneuvering has allowed him to maintain a high level of political influence and public support throughout his tenure. Under Putin, the Russian political system has become increasingly centralized, with power concentrated in the presidency and closely affiliated institutions. This structure has enabled rapid policy implementation and coordination across federal and regional levels. But it has also led to criticism regarding the erosion of democratic mechanisms, suppression of political competition, and restriction of civil liberties. Despite these criticisms, a significant portion of the Russian population continues to view Putin as a stabilizing force, associating his leadership with economic growth, national pride, and the restoration of Russia's global influence. Vladimir Putin's foreign policy and global influence have been central elements of his presidency, shaping Russia's role in the international system and redefining its relationships with both allies and adversaries. From the onset of his leadership, Putin emphasized the restoration of Russia as a global power capable of projecting influence across multiple regions, asserting strategic interests and challenging perceived threats to national sovereignty. His approach combined assertive diplomacy, military readiness, and economic leverage to secure Russia's position on the world stage. One of the most prominent aspects of Putin's foreign policy has been his emphasis on strategic partnerships and alliances. Russia under Putin has cultivated close relationships with countries such as China, India, and several former Soviet republics. These partnerships have been pursued through economic cooperation, military agreements, and coordinated diplomatic initiatives. Putin has consistently sought to present Russia as a counterbalance to the influence of Western powers, particularly the United States and the European Union, framing his foreign policy as a defense of national interests and global multipolarity. Military intervention and the use of force have been significant tools in Putin's foreign policy strategy. Russia's involvement in conflicts, such as the war in Syria, where Moscow provided military support to the government of Bashar al-Assad, exemplifies the use of strategic force to secure influence in geopolitically important regions. Similarly, actions in Ukraine, including the annexation of Crimea in 2014, and the ongoing military engagements in the region, reflect Putin's willingness to assert Russian interests in ways that challenge international norms and provoke both criticism and concern from Western nations. These decisions have reinforced Russia's position as a formidable military power, while simultaneously generating sanctions, diplomatic tensions, and complex global responses. Energy policy has also played a central role in Putin's international strategy. Russia possesses vast reserves of oil, natural gas, and other critical resources, which the Kremlin has leveraged to influence neighboring countries and global markets. Through state-controlled energy companies and strategic pipeline projects, Putin has used economic leverage to strengthen alliances, negotiate favorable agreements, and maintain influence over energy-dependent regions. This approach has not only reinforced Russia's economic position, but has also contributed to its geopolitical influence, enabling Moscow to shape energy security, discussions, and international negotiations. Putin's approach to diplomacy often combines pragmatism, strategic patience, and a willingness to employ unconventional methods. He has engaged in high-level negotiations with world leaders, participated in multilateral forums, and utilized media and public messaging to advance Russia's global narrative. His interactions with Western leaders, including presidents of the United States and prime ministers of European nations, have often been characterized by careful signaling, negotiation, and calculated displays of strength. At the same time, he has cultivated relationships with leaders of non-Western nations, presenting Russia as an alternative center of global influence and a partner capable of advancing mutual strategic objectives. International sanctions, cyber operations, and information campaigns have become increasingly associated with Putin's foreign policy toolkit. The Kremlin has utilized a combination of soft power and coercive measures to achieve strategic goals, influence public opinion abroad, and assert Russian interests without engaging in full-scale military conflict. These methods have contributed to the perception of Russia as a sophisticated and multifaceted actor in international affairs, capable of adapting its strategies to diverse geopolitical contexts. Through these initiatives, Vladimir Putin has significantly expanded Russia's global influence, challenging established power dynamics and reshaping international perceptions of Russian strength. His foreign policy approach emphasizes national sovereignty, strategic assertiveness, and the projection of Russian power across multiple domains, including military, economic, and diplomatic arenas. Vladimir Putin's tenure as President of Russia has been accompanied by a wide array of controversies that have shaped both domestic perception and international reputation. Critics argue that his administration has been marked by a consolidation of power, limitations on political opposition, and constraints on freedom of the press. Opposition leaders, journalists, and civil society activists have often faced legal challenges, surveillance, and, in some cases, imprisonment, which has prompted significant debate about the state of democracy in Russia. These actions have generated criticism from international human rights organizations and foreign governments, raising concerns about political plurality and the protection of individual rights. Allegations of corruption have also been a recurring theme throughout Putin's presidency. Reports have linked close associates, family members, and business partners to networks of financial influence and control over state resources. These allegations suggest that economic and political power have often been intertwined, raising questions about transparency and accountability within the government. While supporters argue that these measures are necessary to maintain stability and efficient governance, critics view them as mechanisms to consolidate power and limit competition, both politically and economically. Election practices in Russia under Putin have been another focal point of controversy. International observers and organizations have raised concerns regarding the fairness and transparency of electoral processes. Accusations include media bias, restrictions on opposition candidates, and alleged manipulation of voting procedures. These criticisms have contributed to the perception that political competition is constrained and that the electoral environment is structured to favor incumbency and centralized authority. Despite these concerns, Putin has maintained significant popularity among segments of the population, particularly those who value stability, national pride, and economic growth. Media control has been a further point of contention during Putin's leadership. The Russian government has exerted influence over major television networks, print media, and online platforms, which has shaped public narratives and limited dissenting viewpoints. Proponents of this approach argue that it is necessary to combat misinformation, maintain national cohesion, and support the government's strategic objectives. Opponents contend that it restricts free expression, limits access to independent journalism, and diminishes public discourse. This dynamic has had profound implications for the flow of information within Russia and for the country's engagement with the international community. Internationally, Putin's actions have sparked significant debate regarding the legitimacy and consequences of his policies. Military interventions, cyber operations, and annexations of foreign territories have drawn widespread criticism and prompted economic sanctions from multiple nations. These measures have affected Russia's economy, diplomatic relationships, and global standing, while also reinforcing domestic narratives of resilience and sovereignty. The controversies surrounding these actions illustrate the complex balance between domestic approval and international scrutiny, as well as the challenges associated with asserting national interests in a globalized and interconnected world. Despite the controversies, Vladimir Putin's legacy is also defined by the enduring influence he has exerted over Russian politics, society, and global affairs. He has maintained a high degree of political stability, centralized authority, and strategic direction in a country that has faced considerable historical and contemporary challenges. His leadership has transformed Russia into a significant global actor capable of projecting power, negotiating international agreements, and influencing geopolitical outcomes. Public perception of Putin is deeply polarized, reflecting both admiration for his decisiveness and criticism for the concentration of power, the suppression of dissent, and the challenges to democratic norms. Vladimir Putin's life and career reflect a complex interplay of resilience, strategy, and influence that has shaped both Russia and the global political landscape. From his early years in Leningrad to his rise through the KGB and subsequent political ascent, he has demonstrated a capacity for calculated decision-making, disciplined leadership, and strategic vision. His domestic policies and leadership style have emphasized centralization of power, economic reform, and social stability, while simultaneously generating debate and criticism regarding political freedoms, media control, and civil liberties. On the international stage, Putin has positioned Russia as a significant global actor, pursuing alliances, economic leverage, and military interventions to assert national interests and enhance the country's influence. His foreign policy decisions have at times challenged global norms, elicited international sanctions, and reshaped geopolitical dynamics. Yet they have also reinforced Russia's strategic presence and ability to project power. Controversies surrounding his administration, including allegations of corruption, constraints on political opposition, and human rights concerns, highlight the complexity of evaluating his legacy. At the same time, his ability to maintain popularity, consolidate authority, and implement long-term strategic objectives underscores his effectiveness as a political leader. Ultimately, Vladimir Putin's presidency is characterized by a mixture of enduring influence, contentious decision-making, and far-reaching consequences for both Russia and the world. His impact is evident in the political structures, social policies, and international posture of Russia, as well as in the continuing debates about governance, democracy, and the exercise of power in the modern era.